To understand the truth about the Spanish Inquisition, we have to look back many years in Spanish history, specifically over 750 years from the time the Inquisition was founded in the year 1480. And we have to go back to the great invasion of Spain by the Muslims, whom the Spanish later called the Moors, which occurred in the year 711 AD. And quickly spread throughout most of the country. The Moors coming across from North Africa here, across the narrow straits of Gibraltar, moved up into Spain very quickly, and in the space of just 3 years, crossing over the Straits of Gibraltar here, they had overrun almost the entire Iberian Peninsula, now Spain and Portugal, leaving only a tiny strip of land up here still in the control of the Christians, who were the original settlers and people of that land. And it seemed indeed that the whole of Spain was sure to be conquered, because the little tiny area up in the north was so small, so underpopulated, that it seemed like it had no chance. But there was elected as the king of Spain up in that little northern area a man named Pelayo, and he fought a battle at a place called Covadonga against the Muslims and unexpectedly defeated them. Though it was a relatively small army sent against him, still it meant that his small area up here in the north remained free. And this became the nucleus for the spreading, the regaining of Christian control of more and more of their homeland of Spain. The great, long continued struggle known in Spanish history as the Reconquest, because the objective was always the reconquest of the whole country, even though at the beginning they had only this little tiny strip of the mountains up here. And gradually, over the decades and the centuries, they spread to the south, reconquering, regaining more and more of their homeland. This area here, moving on down into this region, over here, gradually spreading until by the year 1050, they had regained about 1/3 of the country. And after the struggle in the time of the great Spanish hero El Cid, they had regained perhaps half of the country, and the dividing line now between Christian and Muslim ran almost through the center of Spain. So this was the longest war in the history of the world, the War of the Reconquest. They didn't, of course, fight all the time. There were periods of truce and periods of peace, but neither side ever accepted the right of the other to exist. The Muslims still were determined, if they could, to conquer all of Spain. The native Spanish Christians were determined to drive them out of all of Spain. And so the struggle went on, and the centuries passed. And by the 1200s, the Christians had gotten all the way down to the southern part of Spain. They didn't reconquer all of it, but they gained control of the region around Sevilla and Cordoba here, and reached the sea here. And so they were now in possession of about 85% of the territory of Spain. Now, what does all this have to do with the Inquisition? Simply this, that as the Christians spread southward, as they regained more of their country, they, especially in the later stages of this war, they were getting control of areas in the south of Spain and in the center and the south of Spain, which, although there were still a lot of Christians living there, there were also a lot of people who were either descendants of the original Moorish conquerors or who had converted to Islam, the religion of the Moors, later on, or were Jews who had come into Spain from other areas to settle. So that there was a large non-Christian population in the center and south of Spain as it was reconquered. And when these areas were brought into the Christian kingdoms of Spain, it became a great advantage for a person's career to be a Christian rather than a Muslim or a Jew. It was the church provided much leadership and guidance, not only in religious affairs but in public affairs as well. Clearly, you couldn't rise in the church if you were not a Christian. And public service, the military, the government outside of the church, this was also very much the people there tended to favor Christians rather than Muslims or Jews. So if you were an ambitious young man and wanted to get ahead, it was to your advantage to be a Christian. And so this caused many people to convert or say they had converted for unworthy reasons, or in fact to say falsely that they were Christians when they were not, and accept baptism when they really didn't believe it. There were, of course, many others who accepted Christianity sincerely. But there still was a large population, especially in the more recently reconquered countries, of former Jews or Muslims or their descendants of the next 2 or 3 generations. These people were called conversos, a Spanish word which sounds like converts but means more than our phrase converts. When we say convert, we mean someone who himself in his own lifetime has changed religions. The Spanish used conversos to refer to anyone, not only anyone who had converted himself, but anyone whose parents or grandparents, it was kind of fuzzy how many generations it went back, but 3 or 4 anyway, had been of another religion. This was the growing problem in Spanish society, the presence of large numbers of people whose fidelity to Christianity could be seriously questioned, even though they had in fact been baptized. And that was the situation that existed by the time the great Queen Isabel became the ruler of Spain, of Castile, and eventually Castile and Aragon were united beginning in 1474 when she was crowned. She had a large population within her domains who were known as conversos. Now, that is one part of the situation that led to the founding of the Spanish Inquisition. The other relates to the rise of the Turkish Empire. The Ottoman Turks had become a significant factor in the Eastern Mediterranean by the middle of 1300s. They had steadily increased in power, made substantial conquests in Eastern Europe, and in the year 1453, when Queen Isabel was 2 years old, they had taken control of what had once been the largest city in the world, was still a very large and wealthy city, Constantinople, ancient capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. This was seized by the Turks in 1453, and they made it their capital under the name of Istanbul, a name it still bears today. And so they became a formidable force now, both at land and on the sea. And their power continued to grow over the next 30 years.